have 3 candidates, which is great. We can get a lot of information out. I'm going to extend your Q&A time to 2 minutes each. You will have 2 minutes to fully answer your direct questions from me. Now, some of these questions are directly from me as the moderator, and some of them will be questions that we have received before today, all right, from members of the audience and the community. Also, at the final phase of this forum, Miss Elise Fisher, president of the Cedar Grove Association, will then ask questions of the candidate based on what's happening in the chat room. Now, you may not be able to see that chat room, but questions are going to pour in during our Q&A. And she will then pose those questions at around 6:50 p.m. So we'll watch the clock on that. After she gives you those questions, it will then come back to me for the last 5 or 10 minutes so that you can give your last outro statement. And depending on time, that will be 1 minute or 2 minutes. I will set the clock on that. There is a 10-second warning. So if you're getting close to the end of your time, LaShondra will say 10 seconds, and that means you got to wrap it up. If you don't wrap it up in 10 seconds, she will then cut your microphone and we will continue to move forward to the next candidate. Are there any questions so far?
No.
All right. We will start with candidate introductions, and I will begin with Kenya Johnson. Kenya Johnson, give us your introduction. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having us. My name is Kenya Johnson, and I have been a resident of Fulton County for over 20 years. I came here in 1991 to attend Clark Atlanta University. I'm a wife, a mother, a teen mom, and I've been a prosecutor also in Fulton County for over 20 years. Why do I want to be probate court judge? It's because I myself have been through the services of probate court. I've experienced the loss of a loved one and having to deal with business and the hurt associated with the loss through trying times. And so because of that experience, I wanted others to have a more efficient, a thorough, and a compassionate court. And Fulton citizens deserve that. So what will you see from me as your next Fulton County probate court judge? My vision is for an efficient and prompt probate court so that your family can handle your business, an engaged court in your community with programs related to probate court so that you can feel the court in your neighborhood. And you'll also have the benefit of my experience of running a county administrative office, as well as my 20 years in Fulton County courts as a prosecutor, knowing the law and being a trial attorney. So I ask for your vote because I am your probate court judge.
All right, our next candidate will be Diane Weinberg. You have 2 minutes for your introduction. Is Diane Weinberg still there?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to set my own clock. Hi, this is Diane Weinberg, and I'm running a candidate for the Be Your Next Fulton County Probate Court Judge. I've been a resident of Fulton County since December 2010, although I've lived in the Atlanta Metro Atlanta area since 1994 when I came here to go to Emory Law School. I've decided to run. Well, really, there's 2 reasons that people decide to run. People, and I was actually listening to a talk from John Maxwell earlier today. He was talking about leadership and why people run for public office. They run either for the perks of the office or for the responsibility of that office, that they want to lift the load. And that's really the reason that I'm running to be your next Fulton County Probate Court Judge. I see the future of this court. I've been practicing in probate courts across this North Georgia and actually some in South Georgia since 2005. And what I see happening in Fulton County is a crush of cases caused by several different factors. We have an aging community of just an aging population. We have an aging disabled community. We have an aging community of individuals with mental illness, and they all require these court services. Currently, Fulton County is the court with the least amount of funding in all of the Fulton County court system. And so we have a court that's trying to manage this growing this growing influx of matters on a very shoestring budget. And so my goal is to make sure that this court is able to not just handle what's coming in now, but I want it to grow in the future so that we can continue to protect our most vulnerable population, these both folks that are dealing with estates and folks that are trying to protect family members and other loved ones. Thank you again, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet all of you.
All right, thank you. Tim Curtin, you are next.
Good evening, Dr. Ritchie, and thank you, Councilwoman Gumbs, Councilwoman Willis, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Little, and the residents of Fulton County. My name is Tim Curtin, and I am running for the open seat for Fulton County Probate Court Judge. I moved to Georgia in 1993, and I have been a resident of Fulton County for 25 of those years. I decided to run to serve as the next probate court judge of Fulton County because the probate court is the court that touches more people in their everyday lives than any other court. If you need a marriage license, if you need to administer the estate of a loved one, or be legally appointed to serve as the guardian for a loved one, the probate court is the court that will assist you with that. I've had my own law practice for 17 years, and I am currently the chair of the estate planning and probate section of the Atlanta Bar Association, elected by my peers. In addition to my private practice, I have been a court-appointed attorney for the Fulton County Probate Court for nearly 20 years. As a court-appointed attorney, I represent those individuals who do not have the ability to hire a lawyer or represent themselves. I'm also a frequent volunteer at Fulton County's Probate Information Center and provide no-cost representation to people who need probate help but cannot afford to hire a lawyer. My vision for the probate court is to continue the leadership and legacy exhibited by our Judge Toomer, who's retiring this year. This includes making ensure the probate court is equally accessible to all residents of Fulton County, particularly those who do not have lawyers to represent them. My commitment is to continue the court's effort to provide a customer service approach to each person who visits the probate court, to ensure that the employees of the court receive ongoing education to keep their morale high and to allow them to provide excellent service, and to keep current with all advances in technology to increase the efficiencies of the court. I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions you might have, and I look forward to serving as the next Fulton County Probate Court Judge. Thanks, Dr. Ritchie.
Thank you. This question is for all of the candidates, and I will actually begin with Diane Weinberg on the answer. Probate court deals with a lot of highly sensitive family issues. One of the complaints that come from any probate operation is the level of accessibility. What will you do as probate judge for Fulton County to increase accessibility for those who use the court? And I will begin with Ms. Weinberg.
Accessibility is a huge issue. Probate court is a court that is very much a pro se court. It's a court that most people who come to do business shouldn't have to hire an attorney. But that poses a lot of challenges because the probate court is accessible in that you can come in, but there's not a lot of education about the probate court process. And I know that, and I handed out the council for the probate court judges in the state of Georgia have put out information for individuals to show them how to use the court. There are videos as well that different courts have put out. When I advise my own clients, I advise them to go to these videos, I advise them to go to the forums, but I don't think enough people know that these items exist. So I think education of the public of the very basic aspects of probate court would be extremely useful. And I think it's also important to know when you really do need to get those attorneys. Probate court, one of the challenges also is that we do need more court-appointed attorneys. We need to make sure our court-appointed attorneys are funded to ensure that people who are going to the court have their own rights protected in the same way that somebody going to a criminal court would have their rights protected by an attorney. So with respect to accessibility, I think education is going to be important. I think keeping the Fulton County Probate Court customer service friendly and friendly oriented. Currently, I find it to be very friendly. I find the clerks to be extremely helpful. but I think more needs to be done to help educate the public about what they can do and how that process happens.
I will go to Tim Curtin next.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. Accessibility, of course, is very important for the reasons that I touched upon earlier. We do have a lot of people who come into the courthouse who are not represented. We start with the Probate Information Center. The Probate Information Center was established several years ago and allows individuals free access to 30 minutes for a lawyer when they schedule an appointment. Many of us in the estate planning community frequently volunteer at the Probate Information Center, and that's the start where an individual can understand their issues. A lot of times it can be very daunting when somebody steps into a courthouse for the first time, and we could frame issues whether or not I'm looking to become the guardian for my mother who's lost her ability to make her own decisions for herself. What do I do? We can steer them in that direction. Somebody's passed away. I don't know how to transfer the house into my name now. What do I do? We can frame those issues for them and help them out. As probate court judge, I would, in line with my desire to increase technology, make sure that we have a robust website where people can find information and become as educated as they can to navigate the probate process on their own.
And to Ms. Kenya Johnson.
Thank you so much for that great question. One way that I plan to improve the accessibility of probate court is through education. On the campaign trail, I found so many citizens who ask what happens in probate court, and people really don't know about the services until they are in need of the services. And so we want to get into communities and educate people about the importance of estate planning for hardworking people, how to keep their property in their family to help their loved ones. Equity in my grandmother's house that we lost could have been used to send little niecey to Florida A&M, or could have even been used for Uncle Tim's bail money. Nevertheless, we have to educate people about what probate court can do for them and also improve the technology. There is not e-filing available in probate court, but it is readily available. So let's bring the latest courtroom of the future technology so that people can access the services remotely where they are in their homes. It's interesting that my opponents talk about helping people to not have an attorney when they have built their careers on serving people as a paid attorney in probate court. But I want to educate people so that they can learn to help themselves and also to bring in partners who can also help, such as wills clinics and nonprofit organizations, as well as volunteer lawyers to help people who can't afford the services of my opponents, which is the majority of Fulton County citizens. So we're going to not only achieve excellence and accessibility inside of the courtroom, but we'll also be in your community.
And here's what I'm going to do, and this is extended for everybody. If anyone alludes to an opponent during their answer, the opponent gets 30 seconds as a rebuttal. That is common in any forum. And so I will allow Ms. Weinberg and Mr. Curtin to respond to that because she did specifically say opponents, and you all are the two opponents. So you have 30 seconds to respond. Mr. Curtin, I'll start with you and then go to Ms. Weinberg.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. I would say my record speaks for itself. I've been a court-appointed attorney for the Fulton County Probate Court for almost 20 years and spent countless hours at the Probate Information Center. I couldn't agree more with Ms. Johnson that we do need to educate people regarding the issues that they will face when they come to probate court, and I'm committed to doing that.
Ms. Weinberg? You're on mute, Ms. Weinberg.
Throughout my career, I have spent countless hours representing clients pro bono. I've served as a guardian ad litem in the Gwinnett County Probate Court. I've served as a court-appointed attorney in the DeKalb County Probate Court, for both of which I believe I made $125 per case, not per hour. And that didn't include the time I spent parking. Parking was on my own. So I also continue to represent people without funds on a routine basis. I see them in my office. I take their phone calls routinely on my, I routinely take their phone calls. So again, my record speaks for itself as far as my community and its commitment. And I'll leave it there. I've exceeded my 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. It takes a lot of insight to understand all of the workings of a probate court, and some of it can become scholarly. So what has been your background, and this is to all candidates, what is your background in areas of family law and also complex civil litigation? And I'll start with Kenya Johnson for that question.
Thank you. So I began my career as a probate attorney at a boutique firm similar to where many probate attorneys practice. And then I began in the courts of Fulton County as a prosecutor. As many of you know, the burden of proof in a criminal trial is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the highest burden there is. And I was tasked with proving that doubt daily for over 15 years. The civil standard of proof, which is probate court, is less than beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I have experience in proving cases in a higher level than is required in probate court. Also in my boutique practice, I did family law as well. And then I went to the Fulton County courts as a prosecutor and represented people after horrible crime events, similar to the death of a loved one. And so my experience is in the Fulton County courts, as well as running and co-managing a county office. Probate court is also an administrative office, and I know the business of the court, such as the budgets and how to improve and increase services, budgets, staff, modernize it. I'm in touch with county management and the county government. I have the experience to be a department head to run a business and a county administrative office, and I'm knowledgeable in the courts through my years of experience.
Thank you. That same question will go to Ms. Weinberg.
Yeah, okay. I'm on, okay. My background is I graduated the University of Pennsylvania with honors in my degree in the modern Middle East. Actually, I studied Arabic as well as modern Middle Eastern history. I went from there to work as a paralegal in a class action law firm. In fact, my law firm was lead counsel in the breast implant litigation. I was also the lead paralegal for attorneys that handled primarily securities litigation. From there, I went to Emory Law School. I did receive a fellowship my last year. From there, I went to Kilpatrick Stockton, which has changed names several times since there. I started their employee benefits group and went back into litigation. And from litigation, I went into the firm Conast and Graff, where I handled Federal Employer Liability Act litigation. This is extremely complex litigation. Not only is it civil litigation, but it's extremely expensive litigation. I represented railroads, and the railroads are responsible for any negligence caused to their employees, regardless of how small that negligence
Weinberg.
is. Yes.
Okay, and Mr.
I'm sorry, I
Kirk.
wasn't. I'm sorry, did I only have a minute or did I have 2 minutes?
They have 2 minutes on this one. Did she have 2 minutes, LaShondra?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought I'd only done a minute. I know I can talk a lot, so I'm very careful with my clock. But anyway, So then after representing railroads in this extremely complex litigation, I decided to go into elder law and special needs planning, which is considered one of the most difficult areas of law because of the intersection of the various areas of practice. You have to be an expert in different types of Social Security law, Medicare, Medicaid, SSI and retirement benefits, SSDI. You have to know tax law, real estate law, probate law, trust law. You see all these areas come together, intersect in very unique ways, including probate law. Family law is there as well, although really in the probate court, family law it's not really a family law court. Family court is really tangential to most of the matters within the probate court. Because of my education, I'm a frequent speaker on these areas, both nationally and locally, and I teach other attorneys how to practice in the fields of public benefit law and in guardianship and conservatorship law.
All right, thank you. And just a reminder, we are doing 2 minutes Q&A. Let's go to Tim Curtin. Same question.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. I have a broad-based background as an attorney. When I started practicing law, I tell people that I worked for one of the last general practitioners. So we handled cases from personal injury to divorces, to business litigation disputes and wills and trusts, probate administration, and that allowed me to try many trials, countless trials before a judge, and several trials before juries. In terms of my family law experience, I have helped parties in settlement agreements and process their divorces through the Superior Court. I think what maybe you're getting at is the crossover between family law and probate law, and I would agree that you have many of the same family dynamics that are involved in family law cases as you do in probate cases. We can identify a lot of times when there's a dispute in the probate court, it can be similar to a family law dispute. In one case, you have a divorcing couple, married couple. In probate cases, it's most commonly children who are having a disagreement with each other. That also leads me to a point that I didn't mention, that I've also had experience with many mediations, which are absolutely essential in the probate court. We have got to keep an eye on trying to keep families together instead of tearing families apart. And the mediation is a great way to get that started and hopefully avoid a trial at all.
Thank you. Next question, and I will start with you on this one, Mr. Curtin, but it's to all of the candidates. How have you dealt with your most ethical dilemma as a legal professional? What was that dilemma and how did you deal with it?
My most ethical dilemma that comes to mind would be when I represented a couple, and one of the members of that couple disclosed to me that they did not want the other one to know about, and that created a conflict that I could not resolve. The State Bar of Georgia has an ethics hotline that I encourage all young lawyers to call. Not even just young lawyers, but all lawyers to call if they have a question about that. Ultimately, I had to withdraw from the case because it was a conflict that just couldn't be resolved once I received information.
Ms. Weinberg, same question.
One of the most tragic cases I was involved with dealt with a gentleman. We had done his estate plan, and we'd done an extensive amount of estate planning. This was a gentleman who had his parents were sharecroppers. He built everything ground up. He developed severe dementia later in his life, and he was taken across state lines, and we were trying to find him. We had filed a petition for the conservator of an estate of a missing person. And I did find him. I found him 4 days before he died. He'd been taken off the grid. And your rules, your ethical obligations change. You are restricted as to what you can tell people. And we had to cross that line very carefully to find this gentleman, to find our client. And then the rules changed completely once he died, because I wasn't allowed to disclose or discuss anything. And that was a very challenging time because, again, as much as you want to go help somebody, you have to make sure that you're following those ethical guidelines. And there were several discussions with the ethics hotline to make sure that what we were doing complied with the Georgia rules of professionalism.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you for the question. As a criminal prosecutor, the highest consequence is taking someone's liberty, as in jail time. And so every time I had a case in my 15 years of felony prosecution, it involved jail time, and I looked at the file as a person. And so you wonder whether you can prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt to the extent that you can recommend that someone's liberty be taken away from them. And this is an ethical dilemma that every prosecutor faces with every file that they open. And at that point, I realized at each time I open the file, do I believe the evidence? How do I feel about the evidence? And can I prove the legal standard to convict this person? And with that framework, I was able to determine if someone deserved jail time or how I would proceed with that prosecution, because every file is a life and every consequence is one that people and their families will deal with for the rest of their lives. And so giving second chances, working to restore people, clearing criminal records, all of those are ethical dilemmas that we face according to law to see whether someone deserves a second chance. And I am pleased to be able to have offered second chances in my career as a prosecutor in and out of court.
Thank you. The office that you're running for is open, but there has been a longtime incumbent who has done some great things with that court, and those praises have been echoed by many. So my question to all of the candidates is this: what changes would you make to the current office of the probate court? Specific changes based on your platform. And Ms. Johnson, I will actually begin with you first this time.
Thank you for bringing up the legacy of the Honorable Judge Pinky Toomer. She served for many years very honorably, and the legal community and the public sings her praises. And she did a lot of great things in that court, and she did the best that she could with the budget and the resources that she had. As a Fulton County administrator, I've worked in an office, and I want to work to improve the budget so that there can be more staff members to more quickly process the county's claims and their filings and their license applications. Fulton County has grown a long time since Judge Toomer first came into office, and I hope to take her legacy into the future and create the probate court of the future for our new normal.
Thank you. Tim Curtin next.
The same as with any court, I believe. What we need to do is focus on technology, because technology is going to what makes the court run more smoothly. Whether that is initiating e-filing or even having virtual hearings like we're having now during the COVID pandemic. We need to be ready to face those challenges, and what is going to help us most is through keeping on the cutting edge of technology.
Thank you. Ms. Weinstein. I'm sorry, my apologies. Ms. Weinberg.
It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It happens. So I really see a few changes that I'd like to make. One, of course, is technology, use of our web pages. One thing I think the probate court really doesn't take advantage of when it comes to education, and I think this was echoed before, that we can really put information on the web pages and make it easily accessible to the court. Whenever I have a filing with Fulton County Probate Court, we actually have to physically call the court and say, hey, what's the cost of doing this filing? That's a waste of the staff's time. I think we can use that technology, not as we may be able to purchase technology, but we can better use what we already have to make the court more efficient, to let the employees do the things that really the employees need to do and not have to answer all of those questions about how much this particular filing costs. We've got to work on a better way to fund counsel in this case, because probate court, we've heard reference to criminal court and putting people away. In probate court, as a judge, I can take away your really fundamental rights. I can take away your right to write a contract. I can take away your right to do business. I can take away your right to decide where to live, to consent to a medical procedure, and even to marry. These are all things that we deal with in guardianship and conservatorship in probate court. And the attorneys that are appointed to represent these folks who are about to lose their fundamental rights are underfunded. And in fact, at the end of the year, they don't get paid for 2 months. They have to wait for the new budget to come in. So we need to figure out the best way to make sure that the court-appointed attorneys get paid and can appropriately represent people before the loss of their fundamental rights. Also, along the lines of guardianship, there are some issues I've found with compliance to certain statutes, and I think we just need to go through the court processes to make sure that things happen on a timely manner, and again, that everyone's rights are protected. These are vulnerable people, they've lost all of their rights, and the court really, we need to make sure that we're following the statutes.
Thank you. There's a lot of conversation about equity in the justice system. A lot of that equity has to do with not only access, but education and advocacy. What will you do to make sure you maintain or increase the dynamic of equity within the probate court? Because that court deals with a lot of people on all spectrums of the socioeconomic equation. And because of that, there are some that know a lot about how to operate in probate court, and there are some that have absolutely no idea. How do you bridge that gap as the next probate judge for Fulton County? And I will go to Ms. Johnson first on that question, and then go to Tim and Ms. Weinberg. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Dr. Ritchie, and to the voters watching, I want to be the judge for the poor and working class. Many people cannot afford a will or to hire an attorney to prepare a will for them, but they still have property that they've worked their entire lives for. So we need to get the message out into the community about the importance of creating legacies and taking care of your family when you're no longer around. There's certainly uncomfortable conversations, but the more that we educate people about how we can help them and give them resources and actually help them, we're doing our community a great service, and we are closing the gap between equity and the justice system.
Thank you. Mr. Curtin?
In terms of the equity for the administration of wills or estates, I think we already have a very good process down in Fulton County that can be improved on. But when somebody comes down to the probate court, our clerks are so well trained and some of the most wonderful customer service oriented people that I've ever come into contact with. They will quickly, most of the court employees that I work with have worked there for more than 10 years, and many of them more than 20 years. They can tell quickly whether or not somebody's in over their head, and they can divert them to the Probate Information Center. They can also refer them to the resources, the probate court handbook. There's some pamphlets out there that can help people get along. And we just need to beef up that system of being able to educate the people who need to be educated. And there's nothing wrong with the probate court right now. It's just a matter of making sure that the people who come in have access to what it is they're seeking to learn.
All right. Did every candidate answer that question?
No,
Right.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
The equity gap, where I see it most, again, I agree with Mr. Curtin that you really do see a really efficient probate administration for the most part. There are some things, that take longer than others. But I think that's just a matter of reviewing the processes and seeing what we have and seeing what those roadblocks are and talking to the people who are experiencing those roadblocks, because frequently just by talking to somebody, we can figure out what those issues are and remove those roadblocks and allow them to do their job. Where I really see that equity gap, again, is in those areas where we have guardianships and conservatorships. I became very frustrated by the lack of funding for public guardianships for people. And again, those lack of protection for people who are vulnerable and who really need it the most. I get very frustrated by the lack of funding for individuals who are trying to protect families, who really don't have those resources to protect mom or dad who's being subject to financial exploitation, or to get guardianship of somebody who's been taken across country and we can't find them now. I was in conversations, in fact, before I decided to run, about creating a foundation just for this purpose, to help finance guardianship and conservatorship legislation so that people had better access. Now, from the other side, we're looking again at you do not need, for most guardianships and conservatorships, you actually don't need an attorney. You can go down, you can fill out the forms. It's once you start having those contested matters that you really do need the attorneys to step in. And again, this is where I think finding the funding, finding and getting creative with it to make sure that we have attorneys that are able to represent those individuals who are going to be subject to a guardianship and conservatorship and do not have the finances to hire somebody on their own. We need to make sure the attorneys are meeting with those people and are taking all necessary steps and making it less of a stamp pass through and more of that adversarial process, which actually was contemplated by which the statute expects.
Thank you. All of this still comes down to budget. The probate court is a budgeted item for the county commission. I want to know, in your own words, what is your relationship with members of the county commission, and how would you leverage that relationship to make sure that the probate court has appropriate resources to implement some of these programs that you plan to bring? And I will begin with Ms. Kenya Johnson for this question.
Thank you for that question. Funding is very important. And having been an office administrator and having been a part of an administration that created, that increased the budget from $6 to $9 million, I am very familiar with how to make a case before the Fulton County Commissioners. Now, I know that the commissioners and county management want to provide the best service to Fulton County residents. They deserve that. And so the county supports ways that we can, where all people are safe, all people are healthy, and all people are thriving. And so initiatives that speak to the county goals and missions will certainly be considered more than those that don't. And so I know how to speak the language of the county. I've been a public servant for over 20 years. And so I am very familiar with how the county wants to serve its citizens. And I have dedicated my career and my initiatives throughout that career in serving those citizens. So I know what Fulton County wants to do, and I will create the programs that expound upon the good work that the county commissioners and the managers have already been engaged.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Ms. Weinberg.
Again, I don't have the working relationship with the county commissioner, again, having been out in private practice. But I think, like anything, I've got a litigation background. I also have a business owner, which means that I have to run my own business. I also have a household, and we have to run our own household. And in each case, we have to learn how to lay our case, know our audience, lay our case out to our audience, and show them the value that the Fulton County will receive. I'm familiar with the Fulton County initiatives on the health and welfare of their citizens. I think that funding the probate court falls squarely within those initiatives. But I think it is going to have to be creative. Obviously, every dollar there are at least 10 different causes chasing every single dollar that Fulton County brings in. So I believe that showing the courts, emphasizing that these are vulnerable populations, I think, doing some research. I've been trying to look for the Fulton County budget for the probate court. I'm going to have to, I think, take a few additional steps to find it. But I think it's going to be showing the court, showing the budget, making the case, making the argument, which we are all as attorneys very skilled in doing, and again, showing that business perspective that will ultimately win the case with the county commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin.
I do not know the county commissioners, but I will tell you that I am passionate about this topic of being able to provide full service to the Fulton County citizens through the probate court. We would need to convey to the commissioners the importance that the probate court has in the lives of every citizen. It is, as I said before, the one court that is most likely to affect all of us. And once we are able to convey that to the commissioners, I believe that we will receive at least some of the funding that we deserve as the probate court. I welcome the opportunity to meet with the commissioners and talk with the commissioners. There must be a open line of communication, and only when that happens will we be able to we have to not just convince them, we have to make them passionate about what our passion is. And once they see that, once they see that a loved one who's passed away, and how something could have been done more efficiently, but for the fact that we don't have video conference capabilities in the probate court right now, we could certainly point to many instances where increased funding would make the lives easier for the people the commissioners care about, who are the citizens of Fulton County.
Thank you. As you all know, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. COVID-19 has created a lot of transition for many individuals. In Georgia, we are still under a judicial emergency ordered by the Chief Justice of the state, which has guaranteed there to be a backlog. Court functions have either been suspended, in other cases, they have slowed down significantly. Do you have a plan, day one, when you become probate judge for Fulton County, to make sure that you catch up the backlog, if there be one? What is your plan to do that? And I will begin this one with Mr. Tim Curtin, and then go to Ms. Weinberg, and then Ms. Johnson. And for this one, because we only have a few minutes left in this segment, I'm taking it down to 1 minute for your answer.
We have staff members at the Fulton Probate Court who are in senior positions that have served the court for over 20 years. And when I take office, I will rely heavily on the institutional knowledge of these people. These people live and breathe the probate court. I get emails from the chief deputy clerk at 5:30 in the morning when she's already in the office. We need the leader of the judge of the probate court needs to understand that it's not a one-person job. It needs to be a collaborative job with the wonderful people that we have down at the probate court. It would be a matter of creating efficiencies. We can always create efficiencies in any aspect, whether it is your household, or whether it is my private law practice, or whether it is the probate court. We can always increase those efficiencies, and that's what I would have an eye on doing.
Thank you. Next.
I think the first thing to do, or let me tell you what the first thing not to do is. The first thing not to do is to walk in with a plan. And here's why: because I don't know what's going on. I have to sit down and talk to the people that are there, see what's coming in, see where those backlogs are, make those priorities, and develop your business plan based on what happened. I think walking in with that preconceived notion is actually very dangerous, and will actually upset the court system and will slow things down for a very long time. Now, this position doesn't come into effect until January 1st. So my goal would be, after winning the election, would be to start working with the probate court and start developing that transition, start talking to people who are the head of the departments, work your way down to the workers to see where they find their challenges are and to work through each of those bottlenecks. But I think it's going to take very careful planning on my part to make sure that the probate court continues to run smoothly.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. When I first became second in command at the Fulton County Solicitor General's office, we had a backlog of 29,000 unaccused misdemeanor cases. And within 2 years, we were able to eradicate that backlog through analyzing cases, prioritizing, and reallocating resources. And it took time, but we were able to eradicate that backlog. Also, I attend Cascade United Methodist Church and worship with Judge Toomer. She will continue to be in my cabinet for me to ask and to seek guidance from Judge Toomer, as she has certainly left a legacy in that court. And also, I'd like to add that I want to continue the Zoom hearings. I think that this is an opportunity to bring the court into people's homes, and I think that that will improve the efficiency of the court by being able to conduct more hearings using this updated technology that we have that has exploded during the virus.
Thank you, candidates. This segment from now until about 7:05, I will hand it over to Ms. Elise, who is from the Cedar Grove Association, and she will ask you questions directly from the audience who's participating now.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. First question. What do you think of the Conviction Integrity Unit, and how do you feel about the Sentencing Review Board and the idea of looking at cases where sentencing was extreme? And we'll do Weinberg, Johnson, and then Curtin.
There is no criminal case in the probate court in Fulton County. Probate court is a very unique court in that it's divided between administrative and protective measures. Criminal courts sometimes exist in probate courts in counties that are smaller and have no state court. But again, because we don't have that, there is no sentencing guideline. There's nothing like that in probate court.
I can answer that question. In the Constitution, there is already built-in checks and balances, and our government has checks and balances, and a sentencing review board allows for that review, a disinterested review of sentences. And so that review has resulted in reduction of sentences and reversals of rulings, and that's what appellate courts are for as well. And so I welcome the opportunity to have a sentencing review board on any criminal matter in the event that there is a way that someone can better be served, and that's that checks and balances is certainly something that I would welcome.
Okay, Mr. Curtin, did you want to say anything in there?
I would really only be echoing what Ms. Weinberg said, but our probate court does not have a criminal element, so that there would really be no crossover to any type of sentencing guidelines. We just don't do that in our probate court.
Got it. Okay. Next question. What has been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career? And we'll start with you, Mr. Curtin, then go to Weinberg, and then Johnson.
My greatest accomplishment, I believe, has serving as chair of the estate planning and probate section of the Atlanta Bar Association. Prior to that, I'd been on the board and moved up the officer rankings from treasurer to vice chair and now to chair. And we have been able to implement many wonderful things to help the citizens of Fulton County. Primarily, while I was on the board and serving as vice chair, we were able to through the estate planning and probate section to fund that probate information center that I had mentioned earlier. We got new computers, a new desk. It was a wonderful accomplishment, and having done that.
Wow. I'll say there's two of them. I know you asked for one, but one of them is the tremendous support I've received from the legal community as I announced my candidacy for this position, and the number of people, a number of attorneys who have come forward who's described me as their mentor and who wish me well. The other one, the biggest accomplishment I have from a client perspective, I have a client actually, they're in Northwest Georgia, right by Alabama. And I have represented them on and off for the last 8 years, mostly pro bono. They came to me for guardianship. They came to me to go to probate court to get a special needs trust. Now they need to sell assets in an estate that was an absolute mess from the 1950s to today. We're still cleaning it up. With the sisters, when I told them I was running, they looked at me and they said, "You can't do that, Ms. Weinberg. You can't leave us." Those accomplishments with my peers, the respect I get from my clients, and that warmth and compassion, those are by far my greatest achievements as an attorney.
My greatest accomplishment in life is becoming the mother. I currently have 2 teenagers, and my second biggest accomplishment in the law is simply becoming an attorney and making my community proud. I recognize that my community was unrepresented in the court system, and becoming an attorney was a victory for everyone in my neighborhood and my community. I wanted to represent regular people, not the rich folks that can afford fancy lawyers, but those that maybe didn't have a lawyer or someone that looked like them to represent them in court. So I'm a lawyer for the community, and I will have a court for the community. And that is my greatest accomplishment in life and in the law, is to be a public servant and help others.
Thank you. Dr. Ritchie, do we have time for one more?
Yes.
Okay. For each one of you, please describe your administrative experience. What are your primary strengths as a supervisor and as an administrator? At this time, we'll start with Johnson, then go to Curtin, and then end with Weinberg.
Thank you. I currently co-manage an office of over 100 employees, over 2 times the size of the current probate court. And my management style has been to ask questions and listen. And when you pour into your employees and they learn and grow and feel supported, they'll go above and beyond what you ask of them. And so probate court under Judge Toomer's leadership was a family affair. And I attempt and will achieve that family atmosphere where people feel honored, where they feel supported, where they feel like they have an opportunity to grow, and that their ideas are being heard. And so that is how I will continue the legacy of Judge Toomer and the court in probate.
Thank you. Mr. Curtin?
No. Well, I hope you can hear me, because I can't hear you right now. But I have run my own law firm for 17 years. I have managed attorneys, and I have managed my staff. I have wonderful relationships with all of them to this day, even though I have pared my practice down. The attorneys who work for the firm, I would still call personal friends, as well as many of my former staff members. We keep in touch and share stories about our children, and are very remain very close. I like to think that my staff found me very approachable. My door is always open, and my door would always be open as judge. We need to. It can't be a one-way street. It's definitely got to be a two-way street of communication in order to work effectively.
Thank you. Ms. Weinberg?
Well, I think I have 2 philosophies when it comes to running a business. And again, I've run my own business. It's always been very small. I've led different organizations at various times in my career. I'm very selective because I'm a mother of 3 children. I have a husband who's also like me, very ambitious. We're constantly balancing our work and our family. My philosophies are servant leadership. That's the first one. That means my job is to make sure that you can do your job and get whatever I can out of your way so that you can do what you need to do. That's the first belief. The second belief is that I am only as good as the people that I work with. And I've learned that lesson a couple of times the hard way, or at least once the hard way, where I am very respectful of everyone and everything that somebody does to help me. We are a team. If there's a problem, it's a team problem. It's not, if there's a mistake, we're gonna fix it. We are in this together. And when my team looks good, everyone looks good, and we all get credit for that. And so that's how I've run my business. That's how I've run my organizations. I think, again, I've benefited from it. People seem to like working with me. And so that's how I think I will continue to practice in the probate court.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Ritchie.
Thank you. Now, candidates, you get to give us your closing remarks. I will keep the time marker at 2 minutes each, and we will begin with Tim Curtin, go to Ms. Weinberg, and then Ms. Johnson in that order.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie and Councilwoman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with the citizens of Fulton County today. I am passionate about what I do. I have been doing this for a very long time. I believe that my position as chairman of the estate planning and probate section of the Atlanta Bar shows that I have the support of my peers, that I am capable of handling that type of job. Years of service as a court-appointed guardian and guardian ad litem for the probate court shows my commitment to this. This is again to every is that they refer to the people who come in there as customers. And that is the philosophy that I would like to have, that we are the people who come to our court every day. Thanks, Dr. Ritchie.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Diane Weinberg. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have extensive experience in the probate court. I've been practicing with probate courts across North Georgia since 2005. I have the reputation, and I'm proud of my reputation, of treating all of my clients with dignity, and opposing parties with dignity and with respect. I have the reputation of listening, really listening to what's going on, to finding the best solution. Probate court, as I've already mentioned briefly, is not like other courts. This is not a court where it's a win or lose kind of game. This is a court where we're looking either at the administration of an estate, are we doing what the statute requires us to do, or we're looking for the best interest of that person in front of us. What is the best interest based on the information that's being provided? It's a very different court. It's a very different feel. My clients, I love this, they give me hugs at the end of the day. It's not just a handshake, it's not just a business deal. We are helping a family come to a better place. My reputation, again, is great. And I've worked very hard, I'm very proud of that. I'm a 2020 Georgia super lawyer. I'm AV rated, which is the highest in ethics that an attorney can receive from among their peers. I have a 10 out of 10 for AVA, which is a rating from my clients and how my clients think of me. Again, I've been a mentor. I speak on these topics locally and nationally. I am ACT trained. I'm the only private attorney in the state of Georgia to have training with the abuse and neglect and exploitation of an elder or somebody with disabilities. This is the same training that a prosecutor receives, the same training police officers, judges, and other people who typically deal with these issues receive. I am a VA accredited attorney, so I'm able to counsel veterans about their benefits. I work pro bono extensively, both in my career as well as at the early part of my career when I did court appointed work, as well as now when I work with Atlanta Legal Aid and receive referrals from other parts of the county. Thank you again for this opportunity. I look forward to your support.
Thank you.
South Fulton, thank you for the honor of being a candidate for probate court judge and for being the first city to reach out for this type of forum. Family, you know me for the last 15 years, from being at the Publix on Camp Creek to Greenbrier Mall to one of my favorite restaurants, Baltimore Seafood and Crab. I am in your neighborhood and I am your servant. Neighbors, the Lord has called me for such a time as this. I remain prayerful and will continue to attempt to do the Lord's work in sharing the word about how probate court can improve families, neighborhoods, futures. This is me being a public servant is something that I have always wanted to do, and I am the only one on this stage that has dedicated their career to you and to the service of the public. Family, I want to do a good job and I will do a good job. I've brought programs into your community. I've been there to help you through trying crime events. I've improved and cleared records for nonviolent criminal offenders, worked to reduce the burglary rate when it was at an all-time high, cleared away the Riley sign on Fulton Industrial Boulevard so that we can have a new corridor to Fulton County. I work for this area. This is where I live, work, play, and pray. And I am South Fulton's candidate for probate court judge because I will represent the regular citizen, because I've been through this. I know I've been through the probate process and I know the business of running a court. And so I ask for your vote on June 9th, either early voting, in person, or absentee, to make me your next probate court judge, because probate court is our court for our family and our community, and I will represent you in court. Thank you.
Candidates, I want to say thank you to every single one of you for taking up this amazing responsibility and wanting to serve. Thank you for being on the forum, at the forum tonight. And we are going to transition for our next forum for Fulton DA race. And I will turn it back over to Councilwoman Willis.
Thank you guys for participating. Mrs. Diane Weinberg, Mr. Tim Curtin, and Mrs. Kenya Johnson. Thank you so much. We will follow up with a survey to constituents to see if they have any feedback. We will forward any questions that we didn't get to. And we wish you all good luck and thank you for your willingness to serve. Councilwoman Gomes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm reading the comments in the YouTube chat, and everyone said this is a very important race. So again, thank you all for offering yourself for service, and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
So LaShandra, do they just log off? How do we transition over?
I'm still here.
I'm still here. Do you need me to log off?
Yes, LaShandra.
All right, thank you again for this great opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Let me get LaShandra.
So I see the other candidates are coming in. She's letting everyone in.
Lean it over. Do I know? Okay.
Good evening. Kenya Johnson, can you please log off? And Fonnie, your camera isn't on. Can you please, Mrs. Willis, can you please put your camera on? Good evening. I am Councilwoman Willis from the city of South Fulton. I represent Cliftonville and welcome all. Thank you all for participating. District Attorney Paul Howard, Judge Fonnie Willis, and also we have another candidate. Is he in?
I don't see him yet.
Okay, he did confirm.
He did confirm, and I also just reached out via text. But
yeah, Miss Willis, this is James. We're not live right now on Facebook. I have us on pause right now.
Okay, thank you. I'm just speaking to the candidates right now. We have Rashad Ritchie in as the moderator. Mrs. Little, did you say Christian is, oh, she's texting him right now. He did confirm. And I think I saw him come in for a little while, but I don't know what happened. But if he doesn't come in, Dr. Ritchie, we'll just move on.
He had the time frame, and so we were slated to start this at 7:15. And so I just sent the text, but we are good to go on our end.
Okay, are we on time? Is he late, or what time do we need to start?
We said 7:15. It's 7:12.
Okay, so he has 3 more minutes. Just to give you some background, Councilmember Gums and I represent the 2 highest voting districts in the city of South Fulton, and you have also community member Elise Fisher, who's the president of Cedar Grove Community Club. And Cedar Grove Community Club encompasses some of Cliftonville as well. We were getting a lot of requests from candidates to support them, and we wanted to make sure before we made a decision to go to the polls and made a decision on who we wanted to support, that we gave everybody an even playing field to present themselves to the community and present their platform. So this is not a we're going to endorse anyone or promote any party affiliations. This is just simply for you all to present yourselves to the community, present your platforms, and then we want our residents to make an educated vote when in June. Councilmember Gums.
So again, thank you all for participating in this very important forum tonight. I'm very excited about it, and I believe we have over almost 200 people that are looking to watch this live. So this gives you all an opportunity to reach out to our community, let them know your platform, even if they don't know it already. But again, we represent the highest voting districts in the city of South Fulton. So we want our residents to be equipped with what they need to know when they go out to the ballot box. So again, thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to a great forum. Thank you.
Ms.
You may begin.
Hi, this is Elise Fisher, Cedar Grove Community Association. We believe, thank you as well. We believe forums make it easier for all of us to learn about candidates, develop our own points of view, and help us decide who would best serve our community. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to hearing about your platforms and learning more about you all.
Okay, and we have Dr. Rashad Ritchie, who is going to moderate, and he voted as the best talk radio personality in Atlanta. by readers of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He has also been voted as the most trusted voice in Atlanta radio by the Atlanta Business Journal. He's also a political analyst for CBS 46 News, and he provides commentary for Fox News channel NSNBC. He is a university professor. We are grateful that he has agreed to moderate this forum, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rashad Ritchie.
Thank you once again to both of you, Councilwoman Willis and Councilwoman Gumbs, the City of South Fulton, to the Cedar Grove Association, to the candidates and our audience at large, especially those who live, work, and or play in Fulton County. I will go over the rules, and if anyone has a question, speak now, forever hold your peace. The rules are as follows. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes in their opening remark. 2 minutes. You will get a 10-second warning, and that 10-second warning will be told to you. And if you don't wrap up in 10 seconds, we will cut your microphone to continue things and make it move. Q&A, you will have 2 minutes. I'm extending that because we only have 3 who are confirmed, and we will have 2 minutes for your regular Q&A. That segment will be done by yours truly. If you decide to mention your opponent's name, or if you give strong indication that you're talking about your opponent, I will give the opponent an opportunity to rebuttal. That rebuttal will last for 30 seconds. I retain the right to determine if you have, in fact, invoked the person of your opponent in your answer. Also, during our final segment before your outro, Miss Elise Fisher, president of the Cedar Grove Association, will give questions from the audience. Those questions will build as we continue the forum. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Do not.
All right.
No.
Thank you. And do we have our third candidate? I see D.A. Howard. I see Judge Fani. I don't see the third candidate.
Dr. Ritchie, he's on.
He's on.
Okay, so we do have Christian Y. Smith. Thank you. Here's how we're going to do the opening. All right, I'm doing everything alphabetical order. So I will do alphabetical order going backwards, and then I will do it the other way at the closing remark time. And so based on that qualifier, the first person in the intro will be Ms. Fani Willis. And I want to remind everyone, you all did get an email, but remember, in your opening remarks, 3 things we want you to answer in your opener. 1, how long have you been a resident of Fulton County? 2, how or why did you decide to run for the office of district attorney? And 3, what is your vision for Fulton County in this particular office? And so we will begin with Ms. Fani Willis.
Good evening, Councilwoman Gumbs, Councilwoman Willis, and Moderator Ritchie. I want to thank the Cedar Grove Community Association for sponsoring this event and all the citizens who are taking time out this evening to watch this important forum. My name is Fani Willis, and I have been a resident of Fulton County for 16 years, and I reside here with my 2 daughters. I am running for district attorney because a change is desperately needed. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office is currently broken. God has provided me all the tools I need to do this job excellently and keep our community safe. I am a proud HBCU alumnus and a graduate of Howard University and a 1996 graduate of Emory Law School. I have been practicing law in this very community for 24 years, 18 years as a prosecutor and 6 as a criminal defense attorney. I have tried well in excess of 100 cases and managed the largest division of this particular office. After many rally cries of citizens who were concerned both with crime and with the character of the current district attorney, I resigned from being the chief judge in the city of South Fulton to run for this seat. The job of district attorney is vital to our community. The office has 245 employees, a $20+ million budget, and the individual who leads it is the chief law enforcement officer for this county. The job must be done by someone with the experience to know how to do the work, the integrity to do the work compassionately, and the temperament to work cooperatively with the criminal justice partners. I am the only person on this ballot that possesses all of those qualities. My plans for the office are to bring innovation, integrity, and inclusiveness on day one. I am asking voters to cast a vote on June 9th, 2020 for Fonnie Willis for district attorney. Thank you.
Mr. Christian Y. Smith, you have your 2-minute introduction.
Is he on mute?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead, sir.
Do I need to start over?
Yes, sir. We did not hear any intro.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. Hello, Councilwoman Gumbs, Councilwoman Willis, Ms. Fisher, Dr. Ritchie. Hello to Paul and Fonnie as well. My name is Christian Y. Smith. I'm running for Fulton County DA to transform the justice system into one that values people over conviction rates. This election is very personal to me because I was born and raised in the system. At 5, I saw my mother arrested for the first time. At 7, I saw my grandmother stripped down to her underwear and handcuffed. I have an uncle serving life for murder. My mother lost custody of me after an arrest, and I was kicked out of school at 17. One of my good friends was killed growing up in the streets, and my entire childhood is filled with memories of seeing my friends and family constantly in and out of the system. So overcoming all of that just to finish high school was a big feat for me. Then I went on to finish college, graduate school, and law school. And that gives me the unique ability to identify root causes of crime to help us combat crimes in ways much wiser than we have up to this point. I've been a resident of Fulton County for 2 years, and my vision for the office is for us to no longer waste resources and manpower on nonviolent offenses, but instead to partner with community providers for treatment and services instead of sentences. And if we shift our resources toward combating violent and serious crimes, we make a safer county for all of us. And we do this in a lot of different ways. We partner with the public school system to interact with our kids in positive non-enforcement ways, to proactively divert the school to prison pipeline. We need to stop using cash bail that disproportionately discriminates against Black people and poor people. We need to be 100% transparent with the community that we serve. And it's time for us to level the playing field for the Black community and every group of minorities who've been marginalized and taken advantage of by the system for decades.
That's
so
time, Mr. Smith.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. DA Paul Howard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Howard Jr., and I am the Fulton County District Attorney. I have been a resident of Fulton County for 52 years, and I was elected District Attorney in 1997. That was during the time that our county was overrun with crime. In fact, the city of Atlanta at that time was known as the murder capital of the South. I ran for district attorney based on a very simple promise: to stop the violence. Because every criminal justice expert at that time said the only way that we could reduce violence was for the district attorney's office to be rebuilt and modernized. Well, that's what we've done. We've rebuilt the district attorney's office, and we've introduced many cutting-edge improvements. And look at the results. Since 1997, violent crime in Atlanta has been reduced by 70%. Overall crime has dropped by 63%. And 6 of the Fulton County municipalities are now recognized among the 50 safest cities in the state of Georgia.
I'm running because I want to make Fulton County a safer place to live. I believe that there are 4 things that are crucial in making sure that this happens. And I hope that we get a chance to talk about each and every one of them during this debate. First of all, we need to continue our focus on violent gang activity. About 36% of the violent crime in our community is caused by gangs. And we should work through police and through the community to prevent gang activity. The second thing that must happen is we must continue to focus on juvenile repeat offenders, and we must reduce that number through innovative programs. The third thing that must happen is we must continue with innovation, with fairness, and with courage. And the fourth thing that I want to do is to extend the excellence of our office. And I believe that one of the things that has illustrated the excellence of our office is been done by you, the voters, because you've elected us 6 times. Thank you,
Mr. Howard. Let me just remind Lashandra, please, when they are at 10 seconds, please let them know that they are at 10 seconds so they can come to a close on their comment. There's a lot of discussion now about criminal justice reform. It has now become a very sexy conversation. It did not used to be. I benefited from a form of criminal justice reform through a First Offenders Act in DeKalb County. It has allowed me to continue working without a felony conviction on my adult record for something I did at the age of 17. What I want to ask every single candidate is this: what is your commitment or continued commitment to criminal justice reform and an actual rehabilitation of those that encounter the criminal justice system? And I will actually start with Mr. Christian Y. Smith on that question, go to Ms. Fonnie Willis, and then Paul Howard.
Justice reform, that's what people over conviction rates means. I want to implement a system based off of a system put in place by Seattle, Washington in 2011. It's called LEAD. What they do out there, if you're arrested for drug possession or prostitution, they give you the opportunity, instead of prosecution and conviction, to be aligned with treatment and services to help you break out of that lifestyle. And I want to bring that here to Fulton County, specifically with our drug cases and nonviolent cases, to help those folks receive the tools and the resources to help them live better lives that ultimately keeps us all safer. If somebody's busy working, they're not busy committing crimes and jeopardizing our safety. We create a new system of a win-win for everybody. Crime rates go down, property rates go up, school system ratings go up. And Seattle, Washington has been doing this since 2011. So I'm not telling you about something that I think will work. I'm telling you about something that I know will work, that I've seen with my own eyes. I had the opportunity to go out there in 2018. And that's what I plan to bring to Fulton County, to give people who come through the system an opportunity to change their life versus staying on the hamster wheel that we know now of catch and release. We arrest them, we put them in jail. We expect the jail to be used as a homeless shelter, a mental health disability treatment center, and all of these things it wasn't designed to do. We let these people out and expect for them to change their life. Well, we aren't using our brain power and our resources to help break these cycles. So that's what I plan on doing in terms of restorative justice.
Ms. Willis?
In the area of criminal justice reform, I believe that the current office needs an overhaul. The way that cases are processed in the office is all the cases that are brought there are basically charged with no investigation. I think that criminal justice reform starts in the case intake unit. That can be done by proper investigations, not just investigations of the cases, but of the individual's charged backgrounds. If we did that, we would begin to treat people like human beings and not like widgets. And therefore, we would get people into the right social programs that they need. If that was drug rehabilitation, we would get them into the mental health court if that is what they needed to get better. We would also make sure that people that should not be charged are not charged. We are one of the few counties, sadly, that do not have a pre-indictment diversion program. I think that we could utilize that to change our youth around, to make a difference in the system so that we are not just prosecuting everything. I agree with Mr. Wise. The way business is being done now It's not working. We are failing at this. And we need to put common sense resources into our criminal justice system. This is not just pie in the sky. In Chicago, they have started to charge less cases. I believe that district attorney said 5,000 less cases, but she has taken those resources to make sure that violent criminals are out the street. On my first day in office, we will start to process cases differently, helping people as opposed to just prosecuting.
Mr. Howard?
Well, let me tell you about some of the things that I have done. And the facts are that we have, over a period of time, prosecuted fewer cases each year. When I started, the office indicted about 17,000 cases. That number now is around 9,000. But I want to talk about some specific areas of criminal justice reform. For instance, in our office, we have made it a point to give people second chances. So we started an expungement unit, and when a person has a felony record that we can expunge, then that is done. I have also, for the past 3 years, tried to get the state legislators to pass a bill giving felony offenders the right to get those records expunged if they do not commit another crime in 5 years. One of the things that we're really proud of is something that we started this year, and that is our Conviction Integrity Unit. We are allowing defendants who might have received an unjust conviction or an unjust sentence in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to have that case reviewed and have that conviction overturned. In fact, we are the only conviction integrity unit in the entire Southeast. And I hope to get an opportunity to continue those programs.
Okay, thank you. Next question to all candidates, and I will begin this one with Ms. Fonnie Willis. Second will be DA Paul Howard, and then Christian Wise Smith. What programs, specific programs and policies would you implement as district attorney, or in Mr. Howard's case, already implemented as district attorney, to reduce crime and increase public safety in Fulton County?
The program that I would start on day one that I think will reduce crime is the pre-indictment diversion program. This is not a program where people can just go home after they have done something where we can prove the charges. This would be a program that dealt with the facts of the case and would apply common sense to those facts to get reform for individuals. For instance, if you had someone that had a felony theft charge, we would use theft prevention courses. We would require them to do community service. What we would not do is put a scarlet letter on them of an indictment and prosecute them, making it impossible for them to get work in the future. Once they are a felon and it is difficult to get work, we know we have condemned people to a life of crime. So that is one of the programs that I would implement on day one.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Well, Dr. Ritchie, I think that I would ask the public to look at the things that we have already done. Last year, we instituted what we believe is a major change in our juvenile court system. We started a program called Project Level Up, and interestingly, our partner in that case, in that program, is the Public Defender's Office. And what we're doing is that kids who've already been arrested for 3 times or more, we're working with that offender and the offender's family so that we can keep that child from being arrested the 4th time. The other program that I think is critically important is with gang activity, because we cannot arrest our way out of the gang problem. That's why we started in the DA's office a gang prevention unit. In fact, on Fairburn Road in Atlanta, we have started the first gang prevention center in the entire state of Georgia. Because what we're trying to figure out is, why do our young people continue to join gangs? By making this reform, we can reduce the amount of gang activity and reduce the number of folks that are arrested and continue to reduce crime in Fulton County.
Thank you. Mr. Wise?
So first, day one, we're going to implement a program called Wise Up. I already have established relationships with two companies, one a national company, one a local company, for nonviolent offenders. I'll use the theft example that Ms. Fani gave, where that person will go through a 20-week. Sorry, my phone rang. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. That person will go through a 20-week long program through these companies. One is a local company in Atlanta, Twice as Nice, AV Solutions, where that person will actually be taught a skill and they will earn something tangible at the end of the 20 weeks, a certificate in AV. The other is an engineering IT company. So the point of it is to give, like I mentioned earlier, by providing people the tools and resources to break out of lifestyles of crime. That's how we ultimately make us a safer community, is by providing opportunities. And we can do that by partnering with everybody who's in Fulton County. Like I said, I'm not even DA yet, and I already have 2 relationships ready to go once I get elected, to offer pipelines of jobs and opportunities for people who come through the system. And the second is being proactive, right? Trying to get to folks before crime happens. And that will be through the I Determine My Future program, by partnering with the Fulton County and the APS public school systems to create mentorship programs for our kids, where they see us in positive ways versus the negative interactions that they're used to right now with law enforcement. By doing that, we can actively or proactively divert the school to prison and pipeline. So those are the first 2 things that I can implement day one.
Thank you. Many prosecutors will brag about their prosecutorial conviction record, as if the conviction is the ultimate goal. But when you look deeper, conviction is not the goal, but actually justice is the goal. So what would you do as DA to make sure that your ADAs are practicing a justice model rather than a conviction model when dealing with cases under your preview? And I will start this one with DA Paul Howard. Second will be Mr. Wise Smith, and then Ms. Willis.
Well, I'm glad for that, because what we have done over the years is to make clear that putting people in jail is not our main purpose, but our main purpose is to keep our community safe. That is why in our office, we established different divisions, and one of them is our community prosecutors. We actually place community prosecutors, assistant DAs in the communities so that they can deal directly with communities to prevent crime. We've also established a number of crime prevention programs, not designed to put people in jail, but to try to make sure that those individuals, students particularly, do not continue lives of crime. We've had programs like our junior DA program, our legalized program. We've had perfect attendance where we gave away bicycles, because we recognize the principle that just putting people in jail is not the principal job of a modern DA, and it should not be the job only of the Fulton County District Attorney.
Thank you. Next.
The foundation of my campaign is people over conviction rates, right? So conviction rates, and most people, when they hear the term justice or prosecutor, they automatically think that it means conviction. And it does not mean that. As you mentioned, it means fairness, it's balance, it's equity. And so that starts from the leadership. So from myself, trickle down to the ADAs, the vision of the office will be, how do we, as human beings, try to break this person out of the justice system if we can? Now, I'm not talking about the more serious and violent crimes, murder, armed robbery, things along those lines. Those people, we need to make sure that they're off of the streets. But for the other things, where right now the system is set up to be conviction by any means necessary. The system is set up to be a plea mill. The system sometimes throws big recommendations at people, hoping that they'll take something smaller. That's not justice. That's not fair. That's not balance. That's not equity. So the whole purpose and vision of the office will be to make sure that we are looking at each case as a person, not as a number on the file.
Thank you, Rashad Ritchie, for this question. Am I on at this point?
Yes.
This is where I am so glad you asked the question. And this is the base of where this office is currently broken. What happens in this office is cases are received by the police department. There is zero investigation done and cases are charged. And from that point on, the goal is conviction. I worked in that office as a prosecutor, not in the charging unit, but in the trial division where those cases were received. And what you found was because of no investigation, people had sat in jail that should never have been there because the evidence was not there. In other cases, you found the evidence was not there, but possibly they were a danger to the community, but you did not do the proper investigation on the front end. Further, you did not initially look at the person as a human being and see what is causing the issue. The reality is this: when one suffers with a drug problem, they are going to keep committing crimes to feed that drug habit. If one has mental health issues, until you can get them the proper facilities and the proper people around them, they are going to find themselves in the criminal justice system. As long as this DA is allowed to stay, and as long as this office is allowed to process cases in this way, there will only be an eye on conviction. There is no point in doing it on the back end. It must be done from the time a case is received. And if we looked at those cases as not as cases, but as people, both in the victims and in those charged, we would correct the system now, and it would be people over convictions.
Mr. Howard, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to that. 30 seconds.
Rashad, it seems like they're talking about a place that's not the Fulton County DA's office, because I think Ms. Willis will probably remember that we instituted a program called the Complaint Room. We brought in about 50 new employees, and their jobs was to investigate cases. And once we did that, we were able to reduce the jail population from 4,800 to 2,400, saving Fulton County taxpayers more than $50 million annually. So what has been described is exactly the opposite of what we do. In fact, we increased the number of investigators from 12 to 42. The primary job of those investigators is to work to investigate cases. I believe the primary test to determine whether or not a case was sufficient is to look at the appeals rate. Because if you got a bad case, you're not going to get a conviction and it's going to be overturned. And in the Fulton DA's office, our affirmance rate is 98%.
Thank you. Question to every candidate, and I will begin first with Mr. Christian Y. Smith on this one. I will go second to Ms. Fonnie Willis, and then Paul Howard. What is your policy as it relates to charging juveniles as adults?
Well, outside of the 7 deadlies, I don't think we should. I think we should be more engaged with the school system on figuring out ways to help those kids be kids. A lot of times those kids need counseling. A lot of times those kids live in homes where they don't get what they need. They don't get meals every day. A lot of times those kids are homeless. So outside of the 7 deadlies, which are, murder, rape, armed robbery, aggravated child molestation, like things along those lines, I don't think that we should push toward charging our kids as adults. I think we should figure out ways to help our kids be kids and make them better people before they eventually get older and end up in the system long term.
Thank you. Next.
I don't even understand my colleague's answer. First of all, the only people that would be charged as adults are children that committed those deadly 7. So let's talk about those children. My policy when it comes to those will be the counter opposite as to the way it is handled now in the district attorney's office. Now those are cases, as the other cases, the complaint room processes, as a matter of course, are simply charged as adults. I will have a SB 440 unit, which is the deadly 7 that Mr. Wise mentioned, and have a supervisor there that before we charge any child as an adult, no matter what the crime, which it would have to be one of those deadly 7, it will go under a strict scrutiny. We will look, was this child deprived? Were they in de facto custody? Are there mental health issues? And we will do all we can to keep even those children kept in the juvenile court system. Where we cannot, we will prosecute them justly and fairly.
Ms. Howard?
Well, Rashad, let me tell you that once I took over as district attorney, we significantly reduced the number of juveniles that were charged with adults. It was somewhere in the hundreds, and we reduced it to the 20s. And we still maintain that policy today. In fact, I personally review many of the cases that involve 7 deadly sin cases, wherein we might consider charging someone as an adult. I believe the key, however, is the program that I've mentioned already, because if you look at the children that are charged with the adult, what you'll see is a record of repeat offenders, repeated activity with crime. So what we have to do is, once the child is arrested 3 times, and I believe that is a signal to our system that there's a problem, we have to make sure that the child is not arrested the 4th time and does not lead to a more serious offense that would get that child charged as an adult.
Okay. Thank you. Next question to all candidates, and this comes from one of our submitted questions before the forum. Studies show that there are racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white citizens and people of color use drugs at roughly the same rate. What would you do to minimize these disparities? And I will begin first this time with DA Paul Howard. I will then go to Mr. Smith and Ms. Willis.
I think that one of the things that will change and has changed this equation is in the selection of one staff. When I started as DA, there were very few minorities even involved as prosecutors. But that is totally different today, because right now in the DA's office, about 70% of the people who work there are African Americans or minorities. So I think one has to understand that in order to make a change, one has to be sensitive to those problems. Now, one of the things that we have done in the DA's office is to not concentrate on charging people with small amounts of drug crimes. What we have focused upon are the more serious drug charges. In fact, our drug unit is referred to as the major drug unit, and not a unit that is principally concerned with smaller drug amounts. And I think that these 2 elements combined, the staff and that policy, we have been able to significantly limit the number of African Americans charged with minor and unnecessary drug charges.
Next.
So let's go back, take a history lesson for a second. So I believe it was in '86, Congress passed legislation where 5 grams of crack cocaine was prosecuted or convicted at rates 100% higher or 100 times higher than powder cocaine. So it was a mandatory 5-year sentence for 5 grams of crack, but it would take 500 grams of powder cocaine to get that same sentence. So that's going to the question directly about the racial disparities. You have to look at the drugs that are used and how they were, how people were convicted based off their racial background and where they were. So I think we need to correct the wrongs of the failed war on drugs. That's one of the things that the DA's office and the justice system should do, is make sure that it doesn't matter what race or what person is using a certain drug, it should be fair across the board. So what I've been preaching and campaigning on is that day one, possession of marijuana, we will no longer prosecute. It's starting to be legalized in a lot of states. I'll be very vocal in terms of lobbying Governor Kemp to issue pardons for marijuana convictions, like several other states are starting to do. Because there are so many people, specifically Black people and minorities, who have felony marijuana convictions on their record, and that prohibits them from getting certain job and housing opportunities today. For possession of all other drugs, I think the answer is treatment and services instead of sentences. If we focus on getting people who are addicted to drugs the help they need, then we help them break out of that lifestyle instead of expecting sitting in jail or prison to fix or cure whatever problems they have. And then we see that person get out and fall back into the same thing. So we actually kill two birds with one stone. We help the person, the offender, and we help us, because we're helping break that cycle of recidivism or repeat offenders for drug cases.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Rashad, let's start with this. There is no drug unit in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. The non-complex division, which handles small cases, if you looked at that caseload, what you would find is a lot of those offenses are offenses of people that have drug problems. That's where you're going to see a lot of your repeat offenders. And quite frankly, that's going to see where you're going to see a lot of people that are drug abusers. My office on day one will not be wasting resources on those kind of cases to put a lot of manpower into. We will probably charge those cases, but it will be for a compassionate purpose. People have to be charged to get to go into the accountability courts. Fulton County is blessed to have a drug accountability court. We will put those individuals where they have an obvious record that they are inflicted with drug abuse, because what do you see? Possessions of drugs, drug paraphernalia, and theft type cases. We will immediately track those people into accountability courts and try to build them up so we can cure those addictions and put them back into society as a positive member of society.
Dr. Rashad, I have to make a correction, because there is a drug unit in Fulton County, and the director of the unit is a female. Her name is Kara Convery. I also have to point out that there is an assistant DA already assigned to the accountability court. We've had a DA there for years, working with our criminal justice partners to make sure that people with drug addictions are treated and hopefully return to a progressive life.
All right, thank you. Let's shift focus to specialty courts. So I want to know everyone's direct philosophy about specialty courts in the context of Fulton County. And should we constrict those courts or expand those courts in your interpretation of how they work, how effective they are? And I will begin that question with Mr. Wise Smith, then go to Ms. Fonnie Willis and Mr. Howard.
Should they be constricted? Absolutely not. They should be expanded. One of the things I plan on doing is creating a military veterans court unit like never before seen. A lot of the drug offenses, particularly are military vets who come through the system who struggle with substance abuse and mental health disabilities in ways that most of us can't relate to because of things that they have seen through the military. So instead of funneling those people through the system as easy convictions, we need to invest in partnering with through community resources like the VA. And we do that by having more community court services, more services like you mentioned, instead of constricting those services. The justice system can't keep operating like we've been operating. We'll keep getting the same results that we've been getting. So if we constrict those type of courts, then we eliminate other resources and other alternatives to help people live better lives.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Ritchie, first of all, just to go back, Ms. Convery is over the gang unit, and I guess now they've thrown the word drug in there as well. But going to the accountability courts, there is already a veterans court, a drug court, and a behavioral court. This is a place where I will put a lot of resources. Right now, the way the district attorney's office operates is they have one DA assigned to all of these courts, which shows you the weight or the unimportance they have placed here. These units will need more DAs and more bodies serving in that unit, both as legal assistants and as ADAs once I become the district attorney, because we are going to fully utilize the court and not treat those courts as a secondhand citizen. There is no way that one assistant district attorney can effectively handle the caseload of drug court, veterans court, and behavioral court, especially if you are really screening the cases when they initially come in and making sure that all the defendants that need those services are put in their appropriate place.
Ms. Howard?
Well, let me tell you, I believe in specialty courts. We operate a number of those courts, the mental health, the veterans court, the drug court, already here in Fulton County. In fact, I believe in specialty courts so much that we have worked together to create a separate court on Fulton Industrial Boulevard, and it's called the Community Court. And what we try to do is to make sure that people that are arrested on the boulevard do not return to that area and commit crimes. And we've been able to do that successfully, reducing crime on Fulton Industrial Boulevard by about 70%. I believe that we should look forward to other specialized courts. And I think one of the specialized courts that I'm looking forward to creating is a gun court in our county. I believe that people, particularly young people that are arrested with guns, that they should be handled in a separate court. They should be counseled to make sure that they do not return again to the community and possess firearms and commit other violent crimes.
Thank you. This question, once again, to every candidate, one of our pre-submitted questions. As district attorney, how would you handle a fatal use of force involving a police officer? I will begin that question with Mr. Howard, then Mr. Smith, and Ms. Willis.
Well, in Fulton County right now, we have the largest public corruption unit in the entire Southeast. We investigate police uses of illegal force. We prosecute cases involving police officers. We investigate them thoroughly. We stand by our courage to move forward in those cases, but we also stand by our courage to explain to the community when the police have done the right thing. We are hoping that by the end of the year, that we will take another step forward. And that step forward is to start a national campaign so that we can require policemen all over the country to wear body cams. We believe that this is an important part of the whole equation of police misuse of force.
Thank you.
Swift transparency is the answer. I think too often the public is left in the dark. The community doesn't know what the DA is doing about cases that involve officer-involved shootings. So I believe that we need to be transparent immediately with the community and let them know what evidence we have that we can disclose, and let them know that we are looking into it in an efficient way and in an immediate way. And that's twofold. That's for the victim's family, and that's also for the officer involved in the case. And going even beyond that, I think unity is the answer. Right now, the Black community, especially minority communities, they are only used to negative interactions with law enforcement. So I'm committed to hosting monthly open and candid dialogue town hall meetings between the law enforcement and the community to try to erase the citizen and police divide, to try to get rid of that negative narrative that's out there right now between especially the Black community and police by having open and honest conversations together in hopes of preventing police involved shootings with anyone. Hello?
Ms. Willis?
Oh.
Yeah, this will be an area where we will investigate thoroughly and we will make decisions swiftly. What currently happens with the police-involved shootings is because of all of the political pressure that comes from many, many different directions, these cases are held open too long, leaving the community waiting, often wondering what's going on, often leaving police officers waiting, wondering what's going on too long. We will definitely investigate these cases independently, meaning the district attorney's office will look at them separate and apart from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. However, although I recognize how difficult those decisions are, we're not going to wait till the week before the statute of limitations runs to make a decision. Once those investigations have been properly completed, we will be transparent with the community and show them what has happened. If the police officer needs to be charged because he had misconduct, then he will be charged. If the police officer acted appropriately, then he will not be charged, and the community will be informed as to why and shown the records.
Rashad, I'd like to point out that there is a great amount of transparency with these cases, because what we do, something that has not been done all around the country, is when incidents happen, we bring the family members in and we talk with them about those cases. One of the things that we've learned is that when we're prosecuting police officers, in many instances, it is not at your advantage to talk about it publicly. That's why we talk about it with the families. The other thing that's important, if you look at what we have done in Fulton County, since we have prosecuted police officers, the number of police officers that have been shot and killed has diminished greatly. In fact, the last time an Atlanta police officer was killed was in 2005. When I started as DA, just shortly before that, on average, about 20 African-American men were being shot by the police. I believe last year the number had dropped to 2. And I am hoping to continue our efforts to investigate and prosecute any unlawful conduct on the part of police officers.
Let me ask this question before we shift. We've covered many times at CBS 46 News, advocacy groups inside of Fulton County who say there is a revolving door in the judicial system or in the justice system that allows for individuals to come in and come back out. I just want to know your exact thoughts about that sentiment. And I will begin this one with Ms. Willis. We will go to DA Paul Howard, and in that with Mr. Wise Smith.
I think that that's absolutely correct, that there is a revolving door in the criminal justice system. The Atlanta Police Department recently did a study, and what they would tell you is that 40 to 50% of all violent crime was committed by the same people, the same 400 or 500 people. We have got to stop that cycle. And that has to be done by common sense prosecution, getting the people the services that they need and doing proper investigations and being able to take cases to trial with qualified and stable staff that is with the office. And so that those two things combined will stop the revolving door.
Ms. Howard?
Well, I believe if we are to identify the culprit that has created the revolving door impression in Fulton County, I think that what you'll see is the non-complex court. It was a court that's called the Rocket Docket Court. It was started in 2006. I objected to the start of the court because what they planned was that 70% of the cases processed by that court would be handled by 3 magistrates. And the only way that they've been able to handle those cases is by using something called a non-negotiated plea. Using the non-negotiated pleas, what has happened is in 52% of the instances where the assistant DAs are recommending jail time, the judges are only sentencing them in 12%. So that means that in every day and every week, about 42% of those defendants are going back into the streets. And our studies have also found that the recidivism rate from that non-complex court is 78%, while the national recidivism rate is only 34%. So I have said it on many times, one of the things that needs to happen in our system is to get rid of the non-complex docket court because it promotes repeat offenders.
Mr. Wise Smith.
There absolutely is a problem with the revolving door in the justice system, and we need to break that. We do that by helping align people with treatment and services on nonviolent offenses if we can. And we do that by creating a system that starts with leadership that isn't conviction by any means necessary. Yes, there is a non-complex court right now, but the DA has the power to lead those attorneys in that division to say, hey, we're going to divert cases, or hey, we're going to align people with services and treatment instead of push them by plea or conviction by any means necessary. And let's go back even further. Let's go back to cash bond. When you have somebody who's sitting in jail for 90 days because they can't afford to pay a bond, that person loses their job. They lose their house. So the recidivism cycle starts way before you get to the plea phase. It starts at the initial phase. And we need to revamp all of that. We get rid of cash bonds and we give people the means to keep their employment in their houses just to ensure that they come back to court. Well, if they're employed and they have opportunities, that will also help them break out of the system. Right now, so much about our system needs a change where it only cares about convictions and it only cares about money. We need to get back to the roots of being human beings and figuring out better and wiser ways to lead our justice system. Because if we help the people committing these offenses, ultimately we help all of us. We keep us safer by giving people other opportunities.
Thank you. For this next segment, I am now switching over to Ms. Elise Fisher, President of the Cedar Grove Association, who will ask you questions directly from the viewing audience.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. This first question is for Mr. Smith and Ms. Willis. What do you think of the Conviction Integrity Unit that was mentioned earlier? And how do you feel about the Sentencing Review Board and the idea of looking at cases where sentencing was extreme? We'll start with Mr. Smith and then move to Ms. Willis.
I think the Conviction Integrity Review Unit, one, is long overdue, but then you got to think about whose cases are they reviewing, right? We've had the same DA for over 20 years, so it sounds like they're reviewing a lot of cases that could have been handled differently from the first place. And so what was the second part of the question about tougher sentences? I'm sorry.
What do you feel about the Sentencing Review Board and the idea of looking at cases where sentencing was extreme?
I absolutely believe that we should do that, especially if, like I mentioned earlier about some legislation that was passed from years ago, if it's old law, if people, if there are racial disparities or other things that we need to look at, we absolutely need to look at those to make sure that we're being fair across the board.
Thank you. Ms. Willis?
I think it was created with insincerity in a year where we're coming up on an election. But in theory, I think that the Sentencing Review Board is great. We are clearly looking at cases that would have been prosecuted from 1997 till present under the current administration. This goes back to my original ideology that cases need to be looked at from the time they are received, so that we are not just seeking convictions, but we are processing cases fairly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the next DA who takes over will need to, one, make sure as business goes forward, it is done in a way that is fair, and will also have the responsibility of correcting a lot of the wrongs that were done in the initial processing going back to 1997.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Mr. Howard.
Well, do I get a chance to talk about the Conviction Integrity Unit?
No, sir. That was a question for Ms. That was a question for the two of them. Next question. How do, right, for you, Mr. Howard, it's how do you. For the other two candidates, how would you address the issue of staff retention and its impact on the ability of the criminal justice system?
Well, let me tell you, when I started in the DA's office, we only had a staff of about 64 lawyers, and the turnover rate in 1 year averaged about 50%. We have been able to raise the number of lawyers now to 109 lawyers, and our turnover rate is 11%, and sometimes it has been low as 6%. The working in the DA's office is a public service job. It is a job where young lawyers come and they learn a craft and they move on. But I am proud to say that we have had an outstanding record of employment with Fulton, with lawyers in our office. And I believe one of the things that illustrates our outstanding record is that 40 of the lawyers who served in the Fulton County DA's office have now become judges. 2 of them, in fact, federal judges.
Thank you. Ms. Willis?
The retention rate at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is terrible, and the DA knows it. He has about a 90% lack of retention rate. Those lawyers are some of the best paid lawyers in the state of Georgia when you're talking about public service. But because they refuse to work under this current manager, you find them in Gwinnett, you find them in Henry, you find them in Cobb, you find them in DeKalb. Why is this a problem? Because us as the taxpayers are training these lawyers and we are training investigators, and we spend resources training them and letting them learn their trade to take their services to surrounding counties. I can assure you, people do not leave Manhattan and go work in New Jersey. People should not leave Atlanta and want to go work in Henry County. No disrespect to Darius Patillo. That is just the reality of anyone who knows the way business is done. You want to practice law in Atlanta. It is a huge problem when you do not have, attract, and retain the best and the brightest minds. You lose the ability to prosecute effectively, the ability to evaluate cases properly, and that leads to injustice.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I think it starts with leadership, right? And the mentality and the culture that the leader starts for the office. Right now, that office is led and driven out of fear. The assistant district attorneys don't have discretion on cases. And I think this is important for the public to know what the culture is like inside of there. That plays into the retention rate. If people come to work every day scared of getting reprimanded, or scared or walking on eggshells, or if they are in fear of being harassed in any type of way, that is an unsafe and a toxic working environment that ultimately hurts the public that we're supposed to serve. Because if you can't keep people, if you have new people or cases passing hands so many times, that's a disservice to the public. So it starts with leadership. It starts with creating a culture where people can come to work and be properly trained. People can come to work and feel safe, and people can come to work knowing that they will be respected and valued because they have gone through law school and earned a bar license, and they will be given some discretion in terms of prosecuting cases the right way, where it's not just my way or the highway like it is now.
I really think it is outrageous to say that 90% of the lawyers' jobs are not filled here in Fulton County. Because let me tell you, there's no way that you can, over a period of 23 years, reduce crime in the community by 70%. There's no way that you can maintain a conviction rate of 92% or an affirmation rate of 98% if you don't have employees. That is simply an exaggeration. The reason that the other counties are trying to recruit lawyers from Fulton County is because our lawyers are well trained and they perform well. And that is the reason that lawyers from our county are so respected that they have been.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
30-second rebuttal. I'm sorry, Ms. Willis, this is a forum, not a debate.
Thank you.
On to the next question. And just so you know, many of the questions that came through on the two different chat streams have to do with the treatment of juveniles in our system. And so I'll start with one and we'll move to a couple others. The first one, what specific actions will you take or have you taken to interrupt the quote unquote school to prison pipeline? Ms. Willis, let me start with you.
The school to prison pipeline is a huge problem. We know that we have got to be a partner with our school system. We have 15 different school systems in this county, 15 different cities, and each of those cities have different school systems, as well as you have Fulton County school system. We are going to have to work in partnership with those school systems, the attorneys volunteering with those children, but also the children that get caught up in the juvenile court system. We want to make sure that the brown children from South Fulton, where I reign, are treated no different than white children in North Fulton, that they are all given the same opportunities and that we pour into them. This is one of the places my platform is the most important, because these are the people that we can correct, that we can change, and then we can make sure that they know that they are supported. And we are not here to be just the big bad wolf to prosecute them, but we want to see change in their life, that we do value them as human beings and know how much they are worth.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Well, this is something that we are exceptionally proud of in our office with the creation of our Project Level Up. Our two main partners are the Fulton County School System and the Atlanta Public School System. And what we're doing is designed to do exactly what that question asks, is to interrupt this pipeline. We are taking kids who've been arrested 3 times or more, and we are looking at their family situations, looking at their homes to see whether or not their parents are employed, so that maybe we can provide them with employment, provide them with a better home. And that is the way that we believe that you can interrupt the cycle. And we are doing this with the Fulton County Public Defender's Office. And this is not a pipe dream, but this is a reality now in our juvenile court system.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
So if you heard me talk about my background earlier, I mean, of course, this is near and dear to my heart. I've visited schools in Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, all the way through Athens counties, just trying to be a ray of light to our kids. So day one, I will focus on creating a partnership with the school systems in Fulton County. I also served on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation that created the At Promise Center. And I played a big role in creating that. And the At Promise Center provides a place for kids to come with wraparound services. And it's also to interact with members of the law enforcement community in positive, non-enforcement ways. So that's what it's about. That's what being proactive is about. It's just letting kids see us be human beings and not seeing us in negative ways where we are there to criminalize or punish them. And so by partnering with the school system, by partnering with community providers like the Police Foundation, the I Promise Center, PAD, all of these other people who do great work out in the community to get to our kids before they have been arrested, before they get in trouble, just so we can help inspire them to reach for the stars and hope that they don't fall into the justice system, is very near and dear to my heart and very important to what I believe an assistant district attorney should do to help keep us safer and to inspire our kids to be better.
Thank you. This next question is around, there are a few questions around the juvenile point system. I'll try to consolidate them into one simple question. What is your view on the Georgia juvenile point system? And what do you think we should be doing at the local or county level to make improvements in this system? We'll start with Mr. Howard, we'll move to Mr. Smith, and we'll end with Ms. Willis.
Well, the juvenile justice point system had a good foundation. What they planned to do was to make sure that juveniles were not unnecessarily incarcerated. But what has happened over time in Fulton County, in our juvenile system, even when the point system indicates that children should be incarcerated, in many of the cases, the judges are not following even what the point system says. I believe that the juvenile system has to be changed. And that is why the public defender and I are working together, incidentally, with the At Promise Center to change the way that juvenile cases are processed. We have to begin to look at juvenile families and not just looking at the juvenile defendant. I think that if we would do that as an entire system, then we could begin to change the equation regarding juvenile offenses in our county.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Ms. Willis was, you said Ms. Willis was second. My apologies. I don't like the juvenile point system. And it's funny that Mr. Howard mentioned the I Promise Center. It's like I said, I was instrumental in creating it. But yeah, I think we should partner with the school system and providers to help our kids versus setting our kids up for failure. And I think that the point system right now, the way it works, it sets our kids up for failure. It doesn't do anything to get our kids off track. I think it perpetuates them into ending up in the system as adults.
Thank you. Ms.
I
Willis?
also am not a fan of treating children like an object where you put points on them and then there is a certain reality. I think each of our children has to be looked at individually. They all have different needs. They all need different services. We do have to evaluate their conduct and work on correcting that conduct. But that conduct has to be looked at as each individual child and what led that child to them being a part of the criminal justice system and how can we correct it. So I am not a fan of that system. That is not where we're going to be putting resources on just labeling children and putting points on them, but rather feeding into them, pouring into them, and figuring out what services the child before us needs so that we can correct their life's trajectory.
Thank you. One last question, 30 seconds for each candidate. What is your stance on mandatory minimum sentencing and why? Let's start with Ms. Willis.
I don't like the mandatory minimum sentencing, but obviously that is an issue for the legislature. They are the ones that make the laws. I do not like them though, because I think that you have to look at cases as individuals and not as just putting a certain number on a case. So I am not a fan of them, but I do understand that that is a change that will have to be made with the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Same here. I mean, that's what people over conviction rates is about. It's about people. And I mentioned that earlier. Each case is a person. It's not a number on the file. I think you have to look at the specific facts for each case to determine the best outcome or the best recommendation. So I also do not like mandatory minimums. And I also mentioned earlier, and I'll mention now, I'm going to be very vocal in lobbying our legislators and lobbying Governor Kemp on correcting some of the wrongs of the past.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I have looked at this issue very carefully, and I am very much in favor of everybody receiving the same sentence. In every situation where the minimum mandatories are not used, what we find is that African Americans will receive higher sentences
5 seconds.
than Americans. I believe that the best way and the appropriate way and the constitutional way for people to be sentenced.
All right, thank you, Mr. Howard.
The same sentence.
Mr. Ritchie, I believe we're done.
All right, thank you, candidates. You can now prepare for your outro. We will extend 2 minutes for your closing remarks. It will go in this order. 1, Paul Howard, 2, Mr. Smith, and 3, Ms. Willis.
Are we ready?
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank all of the folks that are listening and participated in this forum. I'd like to thank all of the hosts and the moderators who put this program together. We're living through a very difficult time because of the coronavirus. And my heart goes out to all of the first responders and all of the medical personnel who are working hand in hand with this virus every day. I particularly, I feel for people that have contracted this disease here in this county and all over the country. But I'm also really saddened by people that have lost a family member or friend. I believe one of the things that this pandemic shows us is what we need is stable, experienced, innovative leadership. And that is what I stand for. There is nothing more important than the safety of our families and our communities. And that is why I feel that there's nothing more important than the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I am looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to be a part of this, to meet me and hear my message. My hearts, my thoughts and prayers are for all of us right now. It's a tough time for everybody with the COVID-19, but it also directly ties into the justice system. There are so many people who are sitting in the Fulton County Jail who didn't need to be there because they couldn't afford to pay their bond. And people in close proximity like that in jails, they can't social distance. And that impacts the people who work at the jails, who come home to us, and creates that exposure. So it all ties into the justice system. And I know that I am proposing something very new, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, that is the definition of insanity. So I'm asking you guys to have faith in us as people, to make the justice system care more about people and not about conviction rates, not about money, not about statistics, but we create a wiser and safer system for us all if we use our brain power, our resources, and our hearts as human beings to treat human beings like human beings and not numbers on files. So we do that a couple different ways. We right the wrongs of the past. We get proactive and divert the school to prison pipeline with our kids. We end the revolving door of mass incarceration. We level the playing field for every group that the justice system has marginalized for decades. It's time for somebody to finally step up and say, hey, enough is enough. It's time for somebody to call out the racial disparities and the gender disparities, somebody to not shy away from their Blackness and say, hey, I want to do this, not only for the Black community, but for every minority community, for every group that's been marginalized. And I am that person. My background uniquely separates me from any DA in this country because I can relate on a deeper human being level as to the root causes of crime and how to break people out of those cycles, because you're looking at living proof for somebody who overcame hell you can't imagine to be sitting here today. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I will be honored to earn your vote on June 9th as Fulton County DA. Thank you.
The current district attorney offers you more of the same. He believes after 24 years that the office is his and that the citizens serve at his pleasure. He is wrong. He talks about programs which are great ideals but have no substance. He talks about statistics but fails to tell you that Atlanta is behind New York, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Antonio, Dallas, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, and Boston. And that's according to FBI stats. If you want an office that does not treat victims and accused persons as widgets, but rather as human beings, then you must make a change. And that change is a vote for Fonnie Willis for district attorney on June 9th, 2020. Our administration will be one where you, the community, will have a seat at the table, where we will have transparency and we will listen to your ideals as we help the people that are charged and the victims alike. We will implement a pre-indictment program. We will fully use our accountability courts to help charged persons change their lives. We will do real investigations, which will lead to clearing innocent persons of false charges, ultimately clearing out part of the jail. We will do real investigations so those who choose to terrorize our community are removed. We will bring back the best and the brightest minds to serve the office, and most importantly, you, the citizens and the taxpayer. We will not waste your taxpayer dollars on litigation for misconduct of me or any of my executive staff, the county recently paying $285 of your tax dollars. With your vote for Fonnie Willis as district attorney, leadership will emerge and integrity will restore. Thank you.
Mr. Howard, I'm giving you 30 seconds to respond. She did mention you directly.
Well, I believe that the main barometer of the job that we have done is people of our county, and the people of our county that we elected us this time. I believe also the main barometer with the respect shown to our office and others is illustrated by the 40 judges and 2 other public elected officials who were former members of the Fulton County DA's office. And I hope that you would vote for me on June 9th so that we can continue the excellence that we've shown to this date. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. And to all of the candidates, I appreciate your time today and for you taking of the awesome responsibility of running for public office. I now turn this forum back over to Councilwoman Willis and Councilwoman Gomes.
Thank you all for participating. At one point, we had over 390 participants watching this. And so I guess the pandemic is now teaching us there's a new way to get information out about candidates, because I don't think we would have had this much participation physically if we had a physical forum. This video was recorded. It will be shared in our newsletters. We did get about 400 people to register, so we will send out information and surveys to get feedback. We also have some questions in the chat room. If you want to look at the chat room real quick and get your questions out to respond to residents. We didn't get a chance to ask all of the questions, but we grabbed as many as we could. Our next forum is April 30th, and it will be the forum for the Superior Court judges, Superior Court judges race. There are several, and we will have all candidates. All candidates have confirmed, and I will turn this over to my colleague, Councilmember Gomes. I want to thank you for partnering with me in doing this, and also I want to thank City Grove Community Club President Elise Fisher for partnering with me and doing this as well. This was a team effort, and I think it went off well this time. Take your phone, you on mute, Councilmember Gomes. We gotta think I moderated too. Can you do that?
My bad. Thank you so much for all of the candidates that participated. This was very, very important. When I tell you the questions, we were trying to catch them all. What I will do is make sure that we have all of them and send them to each of the candidates to ensure that you respond to these residents, because they did have some great questions. Again, thank you for your time. We look forward to making an informed choice at the ballot box, and thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you at the next forum on the 30th.
May 4th. May 4th.
Oh, May 4th. Okay. But we
Yes.
have one on April the 30th. So again, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Okay, you did great.
Man, I tell you, it's the thing that you, the opponent, you can just say what you want. Why?
LaShondra, put everyone on mute.
You can just say anything.
LaShondra.